Welcome to this post-landing news conference for Space Shuttle Endeavour's STS-134 mission to the International Space Station. Joining us here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, we have NASA's Associate Administrator for Space Operations, Bill Gerstenmaier.
Good morning.
To his left is the Space Shuttle Launch Integration Manager, Mike Moses.
Morning.
And finally, we have Shuttle Launch Director, Mike Leinbach.
Good morning, everybody.
We'll start off with comments and then take questions. Mr. Gerstenmaier?
Thanks, Howard. Again, what a great ending to this really wonderful mission that we just got to witness. It was a phenomenal mission. The AMS, I talked to Professor Ting today, and they're getting great data from their instrument on board space station. That couldn't have gone any better for this mission. The crew and the Soyuz undocking in the middle of the mission really added another dimension we haven't seen before, and then the spacewalks and all the activities that the crew had done before was just phenomenal. So I can't say enough to the team here in Florida that got Endeavour ready to go fly, allowed us to do all those wonderful things I just described on orbit. If it wasn't for the teams that worked so hard and so tirelessly on the vehicle to get it ready to go fly and operate the way it did, it was just a phenomenal tribute to what they've done. And then today to get to see the rollout of Atlantis out to the launch pad at the same time was also a really special event. So it's a very good day today, and I really want to thank the folks down here for all the dedication, hard work that they put in as we get ready to go forward. So, Mike?
Thanks, Bill. So as Bill said, we've had a lot of going on here. It's been a heck of a month in the last 4 hours, and I think we've used up our overtime budget for the entire month on the activities tonight. But being able to send Atlantis out to the pad and then go out and land Endeavour was really a combination that I never really expected to have. But boy, it really was a nice thing to do. Really made you reflect on what we're doing, and maybe not quite as sad as with the last of Atlantis heading to the pad, knowing that Endeavour was coming back later that night. So. A really great mission, as Bill said. Fantastic work by the crew on orbit. They did an absolutely amazing job. I can't even begin to say enough about the training that went into the tasks they had to do and the effort they put in. Even just on a personal basis, they work really hard to make spaceflight look easy. And I think we made this one look pretty easy, which is a real testament to everybody. Atlantis going out to the pad was a good thing as well. That ship's in really great shape. We're still looking really good on our launch date and have plenty of margin, and so we're happy to get that one flying here in July. Out on the runway, Endeavour looked real good. The crew was in good shape, good spirits when they came down. Pretty happy setup with the weather tonight. It was pretty straightforward. You know, in classic fashion, yesterday we were worried a lot about crosswinds, and I think we had a zero wind peaking to zero out there on the runway tonight. And all the mosquitoes had plenty of time to fly around and find us. But we had a little bit of rain showers coming in off over the ocean, paid attention to for a little bit, but having the STA aircraft up flying really helped us slice that up and recognize that they were dissipating before they got to us and weren't really going to be a threat at all. And so you heard tonight an early go for the deorbit burn from the flight control team back in Houston with Tony Sakachi as the entry flight director. So really good job by them. And again, like I said, the ship looked great. The crew looked great. They were in really good spirits, although it is rather late for them in their day. They were, after 16 days, I think, happy to get back to a bed and get a shower and take a nap. So I think all in all, I can't say enough about the team and how proud I am of them, and how proud I am to be able to sit up here and represent that whole team along with these three guys. It's an amazing team, but it's a good night for us.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Well, I was able to walk around Endeavour as well and look up at an amazing machine on the runway at the Kennedy Space Center this morning, and was able to talk to a lot of the ground crews who take so good care of her, and they're very, very proud of the work they do and very proud of the space program. So it was kind of sad to see the last one out there, but we got her home safe. Commander Kelly, great landing, and got to talk to him a little bit after the mission, and he was obviously in great spirits, and the entire crew was. So great to have the Endeavour crew back, rolling Atlantis out. A little bit of a challenge with the leaky seal, no big deal there. We got that seal changed out, and we rolled maybe 40 minutes late, something like that. And I was able to talk to Commander Ferguson on the deck of the mobile launcher for quite some time during the rollout, and he's excited about his mission. All four of the prime crew were here for the rollout and experienced that. A couple of them for the first time, so they enjoyed the rollout quite a lot. So another, as Bill mentioned and Mike as well, it's been a great morning so far at the Kennedy Space Center. Atlantis is almost hard down now. Probably is hard down by now. I haven't checked lately. and we'll start the pad processing this morning. And we have some margin in the schedule. We have a tanking test set up for us, and then looking forward to a launch on July the 8th. So again, another good day at the Kennedy Space Center and the Space Shuttle program and the International Space Station program. It's been a really good morning. Thanks. Ballard.
Okay, we'll take questions now. When the microphone gets to you, please name, news affiliation, and who would you like to answer your question. We'll start with Marcia.
Marcia Dunn, Associated Press, probably for Mike Kleinbach. When do you think Endeavour will be ready to ship out to California, and what's the status of Discovery and its release to the Smithsonian?
You know, I made myself a promise last time you asked me that question to have those schedules ready for you, and I forgot to bring them. Mike, do you know this is the schedule for?
Yeah,
It's
last time I guessed and
February.
I was wrong, so
Yeah,
I
I
can't
know.
recall.
Sorry.
This year? I mean, are any of these
I believe it's. I'm really.
Early
I was thinking February of next year
for which?
for Endeavour.
For Endeavour.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're thinking early next year.
We'll get you the schedule.
Okay.
So sorry
Right.
about that.
Chris Gebhardt with NASASpaceflight.com. I guess first, what a pleasure it was to follow this mission from beginning to end and execution. Can't imagine the work that went into that. For Mr. Gerstenmaier, wondering if you can give any, or if you want to give any comment to both the human factor and the engineering factor of U.S. assembly complete on the International Space Station for this flight, and for Mike Moses. Just looking for a brief update on the status of the debris investigation from the debris that was seen just at SRB separation on 134.
Yeah, I'd say that, again, assembly complete is a pretty big milestone on board station, but again, I don't want to focus on assembly complete, but I want to look at the other side, which is we really need to begin utilization in earnest. And it's really neat that this flight especially brought the AMS up to ISS. That's a really world-class instrument. The data they're getting is phenomenal. The amount of data they're receiving is really interesting to them. They're getting all kinds of data. We're looking at ways we can help even enhance some of the data they get to the ground. So this is the time when we're really going to utilize station. We're working lots of Space Act agreements to get some hardware flown as part of the National Lab. We're getting ready to go do potentially the cooperative announcement to have an organization go run that utilization for us at NASA. That'll be probably about a month away from this time. So we're really gearing up heavily into the utilization phase and to get ready to really utilize this wonderful research laboratory we have in space.
And Chris, your question about the debris, one of the cameras on the SRB, the right-hand SRB, that was looking at the inner tank captured a small cylindrical piece tumble away right at SRB SEP, something we haven't ever seen before. So we've done all the imagery analysis to show where that could be, what the possible dimensions could be. It could be up to 2 or 3 inches in length. We've gone through and looked at all the hardware we have in the area. Nothing's missing from any of the recovered hardware. Obviously, the ET side of that doesn't come back. But from what we've seen in SEP imagery, everything looks fine. So we still haven't found the root cause smoking gun yet. And so that's still an open anomaly, and we'll close it before we're ready to fly 135. But for right now, it's still kind of in that unexplained anomaly category. There's a few things in there that it could be that we haven't seen before, and we want to make sure we're not being a little too hopeful in saying that's what it is. Some of the pyro wiring itself, if this was a piece of that wiring or a lead or a capacitor right at the end of that came off, that could explain what this is. It's also very tricky. That's a fisheye lens on that camera, and so we're actually doing some tests on the real camera to say this could have been a piece of debris right up against the lens that was really maybe only a 1/4 inch long, but appeared to be big, and so we're doing a lot of back out on the imagery. And so that's all ongoing. We cleared fast enough that we knew the stack on 135. We didn't need to open up anything there and take a look. We had really good closeout photos, really good documentation of the process. And so that was our first focus, was make sure we could get out of the barn okay with 135. And now we'll switch back to looking at 134 and try to identify what it was and have that closed through our normal in-flight anomaly process. So I'm sure that one's going to get flagged as an IFA, and we'll discuss it at our flight readiness review before we fly 135.
Hi, Eben Brown, Fox News Radio. Good morning. Could you, whoever would like to answer this, just take a few moments and sort of reflect on Endeavour? This, she's a little bit different from the others in the fleet, being that she was a replacement vehicle, and did she live up to all hopes, not just necessarily operationally, but in the feelings here. So.
Let's go ahead.
Well, I guess I'll start. No doubt. Endeavor's a fantastic ship. We were out on the runway today talking about that. It's just a little shy of 20 years, and you look at it and it doesn't look 20 years old at all. Mike's mentioned that a couple times, that it looks almost the same as it did the day it came in, other than a couple of the TPS blankets on the outside are a little darker and worn and showing signs of space flight. But it's a really fantastic ship. It came in, like you said, as a replacement to get us back from the Challenger accident, and it's been a workhorse ever since. So not only the vehicle, but the teams down here that take care of it have done an amazing job. And again, unbelievably proud of all the firsts that vehicle's accomplished. And it could fly another 20 years, no doubt, and keep going.
Hi, Ken Kramer for Spaceflight Magazine. Really, for all of you, just want to say thanks for doing a great job for science, for bringing this AMS wonderful for mankind, what you've done. And I wonder if you could just reflect a little bit about each of you, your teams, how they felt about bringing the AMS up there.
Boy, I don't know. I think if I reflect back on AMS, there was a period of time when AMS wasn't on the manifest. And that was kind of a tough time for us because we knew it was a pretty sophisticated instrument. It had potential to do a lot of great research, but we just couldn't figure out a way to get it on the manifest. We looked at a lot of different options of trying to fly it to space. We looked at putting on an expendable launch vehicle. We looked at putting a tug to try to get it to station. None of those things really panned out. It was really uniquely designed for the orbiter. And so we kind of kept the work kind of moving forward in that process and just kind of let life play out. And eventually we got the chance to get AMS to go to orbit. So I think there's a message for the teams out there that if you just stay focused on what you need to go do and you keep options open, sometimes life changes a little bit and you get a chance to recoup some things that didn't look too promising to begin with. So there's a chance there to keep that optimism there, and you can still accomplish amazing things. So it's kind of special to see AMS on orbit and know that little bit of history I just described to you, that there were times when we weren't sure it was going to fly, but to see it there and actually taking data is a little special.
Yeah, and from a flight readiness review side, when we started talking about being ready to fly and we reviewed payload status, we talked about this payload a lot, and it really represented what Bill mentioned at the beginning, which is it's kind of that. It's become the flagship of the bridge of assembly complete into space station science utilization, and really the team was pretty excited about being able to carry that one up and have it be such a flagship type of experiment, that world-class experiment that is going to return what they expect is going to be great science, and then the potential to find things that they haven't even expected is going to be even better. And I think that's what its legacy will be. And so from a shuttle program team, it is one of those things. It's a good thing that gives you some comfort knowing that as we wind down, we're taking station and making it exactly what it needs to be for the future.
And I think from my perspective, I don't get to deal with the payloads a heck of a lot. We're mostly concentrated in the shuttle world. But I do reflect back on our first launch attempt that we had to scrub back in late April. And Professor Ting came through the firing room and was handing out books about the AMS. And I asked him to sign the copy he gave me. And he impressed me as sort of the father of this whole payload, but of a very, very large family that has worked on this particular instrument for many, many years. And he was just a very, very proud father, and he was looking forward to getting it on orbit and having it work, and it's doing just that now. So I'm sure he's extremely pleased right now.
Irene Klotz with Reuters for Mike Lineback. What is the date for the Atlantis tanking test, please?
Tanking test will be June 15th.
Thanks. And for Bill Gerstenmaier, could you just give us a little status on where SpaceX and Orbital stands on their COTS demo? Thanks.
Yeah, I think SpaceX's demo is going to be in the fall. We were thinking, I think around October, November kind of time frame, maybe September for SpaceX. We still haven't made the decision yet whether we're going to combine their demonstration missions 2 and 3 together into one mission. We're heading in that direction. We still need to do some more additional runs, rendezvous prox ops runs, to make sure that that's a reasonable combination to put those two flights together. And, we're not really cutting anything out of the on-orbit demonstration. We're going to demonstrate everything on the first mission just like we were originally. Excuse me. And then we had the second mission right afterwards. And we'll make that decision here in June, but that's aiming towards the fall. And then Orbital is going to do a test firing, I believe, in September kind of time frame, and then their launch of just the rocket will be in October, followed by their first actual pickup and docking to space station sometime in the December time frame. So basically, this fall will be a pretty busy time for both of the new cargo providers coming online.
So it's possible that Orbital might dock before SpaceX?
No, it'll be the other way around. SpaceX will do their mission probably in October, November, and that will go all the way to station, we think. And,
If that one doesn't dock, then
but I'm pretty sure we're going to combine those into one mission, and that mission will dock. And I'm pretty sure it's maybe too strong a term, but we need to go review all the data and make sure that it's right. And if we have a reasonable chance of doing it, we'll go ahead and do it in one mission. So we think we'll see one SpaceX flight that'll be there before Orbital.
and then also Orbital before the end of the year, so both of them?
Yeah, could be both of them before the end of the year.
Thanks.
James?
James Dean with Florida Today. Could any or all of you just reflect on having gotten to this point where you really only have one mission to go, you're in the home stretch. Obviously you'll focus on the work at hand like you always do, but the end is so much closer now. I'm sure it's that's got to be even harder to keep out of your daily thoughts, and just kind of your feelings and thoughts on having one to go and having successfully even gotten to this point.
Well, for me, I haven't had a chance to think about that, mostly because I'm just so tired tonight, and really it's been a heck of a day, 2 days actually, if you count the fact we didn't sleep at all, and so seeing Atlantis roll out was really when it started to hit me that we're never going to see that again, and so that was a pretty big emotional event, but again it was tempered with turning right around and focusing on landing. So I hate to say it, right? I still haven't had a chance to process that. Maybe after I get a couple hours of sleep, I'll start thinking about it. But it's obviously a big thing. But we knew the end was coming. But yeah, it is a little more realization that this is the last one, and so now it switches to you move past the sadness stage, at least for me personally, and you're into more of the regret stage, that things that you're now not going to get to do again, and you feel sorry for those opportunities that are behind you now, no more in front of you. Stuff like rollout and tanking tests and broken LCA boxes and all kinds of things like that.
Mark Ratterman from Talking Space. Question for Bill Gerstenmaier. I think people connect with the shuttle program, sometimes with a crew, sometimes with a mission patch, that symbol that we see so often, sometimes with a payload. Is there a particular connection that has stuck with you maybe through the years, or a recent connection that you feel will always be there as one of the top ones for you?
Yeah, what's unique is when I think about the shuttle program, I probably think about the people that I've got the privilege of working with throughout the years. I was very lucky to get started in the shuttle business back in the wind tunnels in Cleveland, and did air data probe calibration stuff and shuttle-based heating on the external tanks. So I've been around the program for a while, and throughout those 34 years that I've been here with NASA, I've met some amazing folks that are unbelievably dedicated. I think there's no finer workforce in the world. They continually amaze me. We continue to ask them to do the impossible, to make schedules work, to do extra work, to go above and beyond, to strive for absolute perfection each and every time, and they continue to rise to the occasion and deliver. So when I think back about the shuttle program, I think of the people that I have had the privilege of working with, and they are some of the finest people that I've ever known, and it's really my privilege to even be considered part of the team that they work with.
Todd Halverson of Florida Today for Mike Leinbach. Just a couple of probably cleanup questions. You mentioned margin in the schedule for 135. I'm wondering how many contingency days you have, and I'm also wondering what your dates are for the terminal countdown demonstration test.
Okay, let's see, TCDT will be June 23rd, and the weekend of July the 4th we have all 3 days off, so we're looking forward to that holiday. We'll be working weekends leading up to the July 4th weekend holiday, all weekends, but it's different crews on the different weekend days depending what the tasks are. And so we're not going to be stressing any one particular group very much at all. So it's a good schedule. We feel good about it, and we should be able to get to the 8th no problem.
Yeah, just to follow, I think I heard both mics today, hint at overtime, and I can remember after Challenger, overtime was such a big deal in the discussions of what went on leading up to that that 51L mission, and you set some gates in place, if I remember correctly, 60 hours a week and no more than so many days in a row, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm wondering where you're sitting right now with your overtime rates as you go into this last flow. Just kind of curious.
Well, I think Mike's comment about overtime is just kind of off the cuff remark. We were talking in the green room about it, so it was just kind of a funny thing we were talking about. The workplace time violation issue, we track that very, very closely. In fact, I'm responsible for part of it. Violations of the major magnitude require my approval, and deviations require my pre-approval, and violations require my signature after the violation has occurred. So we track them very, very closely. And we're running very, very low on deviations and violations to the 60-hour rule and the 240 hours in 1 month rule. And so we've laid out the schedule, and we've told the program what we think we can do as a processing team. They've accepted that schedule, and in fact, we probably could have set an earlier launch date than July the 8th, frankly.
Yep.
But we told Mike and the rest of the program that we needed a couple extra days, and obviously they gave it to us, and so we feel good about it. Again, we're going to be working every weekend day other than July 4th weekend, but it's different crews, and so once again, we're not going to be stressing any particular group very, very much at all. We have our workforce in place. We track that also monthly with our workforce council. And right now, there are no reasons to be concerned about the workforce and the hours we're going to be asking them to work through the 135 flow.
Yeah, and I'll emphasize again that Mike said it exactly right. The team here for the last, ever since I came on board 3 years ago, but really here in the last 2 years, that is one of our major discussion items when we talk schedule. It's really the resources that we then apply to that schedule. So we'll set the calendar. You put the black bars on the chart. It tells you what day you can make. And then we sit down and we have our USA workforce team led by Patty Stratton and Mark Nappy down here, and then our ground processing team with Mike and Rita Wilcox and company working the rest of that team that lays the workforce on top of that and says, okay, these are the areas where we're a little critical on skills right now. These are the areas where we know we have layoffs coming. Where's that work line up? Who's the real crew working? And so it's not just, what work gets done on a given day. When I looked at this schedule and they brought me the July 8th, I was initially a little nervous about it because it only had those 3 contingency days. But when you look at the actual schedule and you see that it's a different crew every weekend, there's 8 days of x-rays that we take after the tanking test, and that's really all we're doing is x-rays at the pad. So that team gets worked hard, but the rest of the team isn't doing anything on those days. And you really see that the schedule was built to protect the workforce. And we've really been doing that as almost a job number one for the last couple of years, knowing full well that with the burn down here at the end of the program, managing the resources of the people was going to be our real challenge. And so I did make an off-the-cuff remark at the beginning, but it was really a joke. These guys, this is very important to them, and we be very careful that we don't burn anybody out or push anything too hard.
Another example of that, Todd, is a couple 3 weeks ago, I think we sat here and said, I'm not quite sure we could do rollout and landing on the same day. But we took a very hard look at the crews themselves, down to the individuals, and made sure that we had sufficient people to do both operations and not stress any particular group. And came forward with a recommendation. Yeah, it looks good. We can do it. And so we pay very, very close attention to the workforce. Very, very proud of that program.
Right, so no more jokes now. That's what that means.
You got it.
Denise Chow at space.com. A question for Bill Gerstenmaier or Mike Moses, I think. The 134 crew seemed to be able to get a lot accomplished on orbit, and especially with it being a fairly long mission. I was wondering if you could comment on where that's placed the station program in terms of being in a good position for the post-shuttle years, and also maybe how it's laid the groundwork for the work that needs to be done in 135.
Yeah, I think the the extension days we added helped the station crews get ahead on some tasks that they needed to get done. We wanted to get the oxygen generation system set up with the device in that actually conditions the water to keep the pH level correct in the oxygen generation system, and that was able to be accomplished. The carbon dioxide removal system in Node 3, we wanted to get that bed changed out and returned, and the crews were able to get that done and get that ahead. So we've got the life support system fully functional now in Node 3, which is a backup to the Russian system, which is really good. That also will allow us to run the Sabatier system, which will generate some water for us from a station standpoint. So, their extra hours on orbit really helped a lot, and that, the power converter that takes the station power and then allows us to power down the fuel cells that gives us that extra extension time frame has proved really invaluable for us. If you look at when we put that on orbit and you look how many days we were actually able to add to the overall missions, we probably got another mission's worth of on-orbit time available by putting that power system on the orbiter. So that was a really good decision when we put that on. Atlantis, unfortunately, doesn't have that, so that next mission will be limited, and we won't be able to get ahead on the Atlantis mission. But I think that's been really pretty phenomenal, and it was pretty amazing when we had the 16 plus 0 day mission, and we had 4 days more of margin. And we were kind of all joking amongst ourselves. We're not sure we on the ground can make 20 days. We don't know about the crew, but that's an awful long mission for us. And but it worked out really well. So I can't. Again, it really set station up very well to be ready to go do operations without the shuttle.
You have a few more follow-up questions?
Eben Brown, Fox News Radio. Could you, again, whoever would like to take it, talk about the end of shuttle EVAs? Obviously, I think we had the last shuttle-based EVA with this mission. What did we learn about EVA? What did the shuttle program contribute to that? And what's going to happen to the EMUs? Are they going to become museum pieces themselves?
Let's see, technically this was the last shuttle-trained EVA. We haven't done a shuttle-based EVA other than the Hubble mission in a very long time. EVAs go out of the station airlock. So we're using station airlock, station assets. We take our suits up and bring them back because it's easy to service. But in the meantime, the EVA project office and the space station program have been slowly upgrading those units to be able to have more on-orbit lifetime and to be able to perform a lot of the maintenance that we do on the ground in orbit. And so that's all been built and in place and is ready to take place. So the EMUs will go up and stay on orbit. I forget their lifetime now, but it's in the multiple years category. And they can be rotated out with cargo resupply if you need to replace parts and bring a hard upper torso back or something like that. But basically we've stocked the airlock on station for U.S.-based EVAs that we'll need to do throughout. And so from that standpoint, it's not really the end of anything. It's the end of the fact that we have that dedicated training time on the ground to take a crew 2 years out and know exactly what they're going to do and have perfectly choreographed timelines. And so station assembly has shown us a couple things. One is to be as efficient as we are in shuttle-based EVAs, you needed to do that. You needed to spend that time on the ground and train to know exactly what you're doing and exactly where you are. But to move into further exploration and how we go in the future, you're not going to have that opportunity to have somebody who's practiced just that one task and knows how to do it very well. You need to bring a tool set with you of skill-based tasks. And station's really shown us the way to train crews to do that and allowed us to throw tasks in and out, move things around. You're seeing a lot of the tasks on these last couple missions be that laundry list of, hey, we have 15 other things we need to do, let's throw them in. We choreograph it well because we can train it, but stage EVAs, which is the ones we do when there's no shuttle present, and what we'll be doing from now on, just aren't as time efficient, but they really can accomplish all the same activities. The good news on station is there's not that many systems that need immediate EVA attention, like in the next hour or so. You have a few days before you have to go out, and those timelines have been pre-built and pre-trained. And so then the rest of it's just that throw the skill set together, get ready to go, and then go out the door. So I think we've learned that by being able to have the experience base of being able to train really hard, practice really hard, and then go up and maybe not be able to fly exactly what you had trained, come back and recognize that, even though that task wasn't what I practiced for, I was still able to do it very well. And that let us take baby steps down that path to know that I think I know the station program wouldn't hesitate probably to do anything outside EVA, and the crew office would be right there with them to say, yep, we haven't run that in the pool, but we're ready to go out the door and do it. And the ground team really gained a lot of experience as well. That's something that is a true testament, right? You think back the station, we're talking about assembly complete. We built this thing for the last 10 plus years, and I can't really list too many things that didn't actually fit together. I mean, the biggest fear that kept people up, I know my wife was involved in all the ammonia cable stuff on EVA, that she'd wake up in the middle of the night that we were doing an EVA and you'd come up about a foot short and the cable's not quite long enough. And all the ground testing and the work that the teams did, that's a really big testament. You think about how big that space station is, and we built it part by part in the shuttle payload bay over the years, and it all fit together. It all worked perfect, and it's performing absolutely fantastic. The maintenance hours aren't nearly what we were projecting. EVA's come a long way. You go back all the way in the shuttle program, we started with baby steps, and now you look at what we just did to build that station. It's an amazing skill set that we built for our space program.
Ken?
Ken Kramer for Spaceflight Magazine. For Bill, please, can you tell us the status of fly around on 135? Are you still planning that? And when will the pictures from Paolo Nespoli be released from the undock? Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think we're not going to plan to do a fly around on 135. I'm not sure where the images are. They're with the data that went to Moscow. The Russians have a Soyuz launch coming up on June 8th. And so I think probably sometime around that time frame we'll get the data from Moscow and get those images released. So they're with the rest of the data, the digital data that's been stored on the Soyuz. The flash cards are there, and we should get it around, probably I would assume sometimes around the launch time of the Soyuz.
Marcia Dunn, Associated Press again, probably for Bill, but Greg Shamatov was so wobbly yet so determined to join his crew out there on the runway. I'm just wondering how he's doing and anything you can say about him.
He seemed fine. When we talked to him, he was really excited about getting back to station again and getting a chance to go do the EVAs that he did. So we had a good chance to talk to him, and he's fine.
Chris Gebhardt, with a follow-up to Mike Leinbach. You mentioned the X-rays that you plan to do on the 135 tank on the stringers, and I'm just curious, is that just an added safeguard measure based on what we saw with the tank on Discovery and the 133 flow, just to make sure everything's working, just to make sure everything's working as planned in there? And if I'm remembering correctly, it's only the front side or the orbiter-facing side of the tank that's getting X-rayed because the backside can't be accessed at the pad, correct?
Yeah, I think that's a good question for Mike to answer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we did the modification to the ET-138, the tank that's out there on the pad now for the Atlantis stack. And if you go back to the history here, ET-137 had the cracks, so we modified it, repaired the cracks, and modified the tank with the stringer mod, adding the doublers. We went ahead and did that same mod on the tank that just launched with Endeavour, ET-122. Even though it wasn't made of the same metal, we didn't prove that to ourselves until after we did the mod. And so the ET-138 is back in family. It has that suspect metal in the stringers, so we preemptively did the mod on that tank. And so we're going to go ahead and do a tanking test just to prove to ourselves that nothing unexpected happened. All our models are right, and we do understand how this mod performs. And so the X-rays are really that double check to show that, yeah, we understand the stresses that got put into the system. One of the things we learned from this investigation was that we initially thought we had to have bad parts somewhere. Something had to be a failure, that there was debris in there that shouldn't have been in there. There was a crack that came from the factory, and we rapidly found that was not the case. And then we kind of focused on, well, then there has to be some kind of assembly defect. When we built the thing, we had some problem, a spacer that wasn't put in, something like that. And we found that wasn't the problem. But we did learn that there are areas that are very susceptible to assembly stress. and you can lock up a lot of load into the system if you do have this thing stack up in the tolerances. But by itself, that assembly stress isn't enough to break a stringer. And then we finally came back around full circle to find that really we did have some material defects in the fracture toughness of the metal, a property that we weren't directly measuring in our acceptance testing. And so when you added that plus the stack up of assembly stresses, then you got enough to actually see the cracks that we had. So we don't expect with this mod that load is removed. The assembly stresses are still there. We haven't taken the stringers off and removed all the stress from the system and put them back on. All we did was drill out about 5 fasteners on the tops of each stringer. And so those assembly stresses are there. The tanking test is to just show ourselves that, yep, they're not out of family with what we thought they were. Those by themselves aren't big enough to cause any problems. And so the mod we put on takes care of the metal, and we're back in family. We have plenty of margin. So, yeah, we're just going to do front side x-rays on the tank that we can get, and that should show everything fine. Obviously, we'll look at the data, and if we're not happy with what we see, we'll take the next course of action. But it really is that safety check of our Band-Aid that we put on the tank.
James?
James Dean, Florida Today. I think for Mike Leinbach, looking ahead just a little bit, there seems to be still pretty widespread perception around the community that in a couple months' time, KSC is essentially just going to close its doors, and the Space Coast really won't be deserving of its nickname. I wonder if, is there truth to that perception, at least for a period of time, or how would you describe to folks out there work and life here at KSC post-shuttle, even though we're not quite there yet?
Well, the short answer is it will be different without the shuttle program. That's certainly a reality. Our center director, Bob Cabana, along with NASA headquarters, senior management, is working on very, very, very aggressively plans for the Kennedy Space Center, along with the other space centers that are affected by the shutdown of the shuttle program. There are preliminary plans in place. We're talking to other customers who may want to use the OPF bays. We're talking to customers who may want to use a launch pad. And while those are preliminary discussions, I feel good that the Kennedy Space Center will be used in the future. I don't have a date. I can't tell you when the next program comes here, if it's one of the commercial operators that would like to use our facilities, or when we'll be getting the direction from NASA on building our own heavy lift vehicle. That report, I believe, Bill, is due at the end of June. You can do more with that than I can, but it'll be different around here for a period of time, but we're looking forward to the point in time when we do have another vehicle here, we're going to be able to launch and hire some of our workforce back.
Hi, Mike Mackey from Local 6 here in Orlando. The crew earlier was talking about how when the shuttle program finally completes, that the country itself will lose its status symbol. It's something to point to. So what's next? What will the country, the people be able to rally around once the shuttle program completes itself?
Well, we're really looking forward to go kind of beyond low Earth orbit is our next area that we're going to. And then when we take a look at what we need to do that, we need a different vehicle than the shuttle. We need a vehicle that can re-enter from the high speeds that you would see coming from like a lunar trajectory or from even a geosynchronous orbit kind of trajectory, and that's more of a capsule design. And we've recently approved the contract for the multi-purpose crew vehicle, and that'll be the Orion contract that was building the capsule for us before. So that'll continue and move forward. We're right now trying to put together plans to find a new heavy lift launch vehicle to launch that Orion capsule, and also be have the ability to launch about 130 metric tons to orbit. And the reason you want a vehicle that big is if you really want to go somewhere like to Mars or to any distances, you really need a vehicle that can carry much more mass than even the shuttle can. It took us how many ever flights to build the station? I think roughly 38 shuttle flights or so to put the station together. The station's mass is about the mass of a vehicle you would have to take to Mars, and you surely don't want to spend that many missions building your vehicle to go to Mars in low Earth orbit. You want a capability to get much more mass together, so in 3 or 4 launches you can get large portions of your spacecraft headed towards Mars, landed on Mars, or to a near-Earth asteroid, and then you can take the crew along with them. So the next phase is to build together some concrete plans. As Mike said, the first step will be for us to talk. We were required to put together a report to Congress on what we were going to do with our capsule and our heavy lift launch vehicle. We dropped an interim report in January. We're going to try to to flesh that out a little bit with some more details about specifically what work, what areas we want to move in, and then start building some concrete plans that head us to those other destinations I just called out. We're also going to try to do some work at the centers where we need more than just a crew vehicle and a heavy lift launch vehicle. We need a deep space habitat, a place for the crew to live, something similar to like a module on station where the crew can live for these long transit times. They can't live in the capsule for that time. We're going to try to do some of that work in-house with some of the centers looking at those kind of things. If we need a lander for some destinations, we may need to work on a lander. So we've got some basic pieces together. We've identified the parts we need to get beyond low Earth orbit. Now it's for us to put together detailed plans and get ready to move out on that. So I think, we're going to quickly change that focus from what we've been doing in low Earth orbit, utilize the heck out of space station, show that space has a real benefit to us from a research standpoint. That's the goal of station, or one thing that station can do. You can use station to maybe be a new economic engine, to create maybe a new market in space that pulls other work to space. That's the station aspect that'll be strong, and then to work internationally to build this plan to get beyond low Earth orbit. And we're continuing to work with all our international partners to figure out exactly what that plan is and move forward. So again, I think it's a lull, but I think we can quickly get some plans together and get some things that are pretty inspiring to move forward and continue to stretch ourselves and do those really hard things that we are really good at doing, and to require the workforce like we got today to really be dedicated to work as a team to go do those big tasks.
We have time for one last question that goes to Evan.
Hi, Eben Brown, Fox News Radio. If I remember correctly, there was plans to place a plaque on the runway where Discovery's wheels came to a stop. Will you do the same for Endeavour? And what's the wording on that plaque gonna read? Or has Discovery's actually been placed yet?
No, we're still working on that. I've asked some of the guys who've worked landing for a long time to help design that themselves. And we talked to the FAA. Since the landing facility is an actual operational runway, we don't want to do anything to the runway itself that would be a maintenance problem. But at a minimum, we'll put a marker off on the side. The general concept is basically to mark wheel stop and kind of denote which vehicle and how many miles it's flown. And just try to kind of have a little memento of that. We've been talking about that. There's some with a program that's been going on for 30 years. We haven't stopped to add a lot of commemorative things around the center because we're still doing them. Now that we're winding up, we're having some folks take a look at what we can do to kind of just document, here things were type of stuff. It's a sad thing to do, but we're going to try to make sure we at least do a little bit of it.
Okay, that's our final question. Our next media briefing will be with the astronauts from Endeavour's STS-134 mission. That crew news conference is set to begin at about 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, but it may be a little sooner, so please stay tuned to NASA television for the latest and when the crew news conference will be. In the meantime, for more information about the STS-134 mission, you can go to www.nasa.gov/shuttle. Thanks for joining us.